Hello everyone. This lab we're going to cover how to create ripple effects as well as some splash effects and things like that. And the first thing I'm doing here is I imported, or not necessarily imported, I just dragged and dropped from my previous rain lab that I did with you guys. I just dragged and dropped from my rain file, just the rainfall, and it brought in both of them. So you can copy and paste them too, Control C, Control V, whatever is easiest for you. So what I've got here is my raindrop, or water drop in this case. I'm only going to do just one this time. I'm not going to do a whole bunch because I just want to go ahead and show you. And the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just create something. I guess it really won't matter. If we need to add a reference, we will in a moment. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just do a splash, or a ripple. Let's do ripple first. Okay. So in this ripple, what I'm going to do is it's similar to the lightning. I'm going to start it on frame 10, F6. So I inserted a keyframe on insert keyframe on frame 10. And on this last frame, what I'm going to do, and I'll do it in a minute, I guess, is I'm going to make sure that this doesn't play in loop continuously. So on frame 10 is where I'm going to do my first little ripple. And I'm going to just use my brush tool, and you can adjust the size to maybe be a little bit thicker, but not too much. And something like this. No, that's way too thick. Okay, so it's going to go whoop. And one of the things actually is I want it to do something more like that, more oval in shape. And I'm going to press F7. And as I mentioned here, I did not want this to happen, so I'm going to press F7, insert blank keyframe, just to make sure that it no longer continues to create extra frames. So I've got the start of my very first ripple. Now on the next one, I need to turn on my onion skin tool, and I'm going to go ahead and, keeping this same pattern, whoop, I'm going to start to draw this out. And I kind of think that maybe the brush I chose is a little too thick. So I think I'm going to go ahead and just thin it out. And I'm going to go ahead and just redraw these in with a smaller brush. And you'll notice that I'm keeping the top line at approximately the same exact spot. And the reason that is because the perspective I'm looking at it from. So if it were from a top view, I would actually have it be like a perfect circle, whereas this is from sort of like a side view that I want it to ripple out. Differently. So with keeping that same perspective in mind. Okay. And let's go ahead and play that. So I'm going to play it here. I don't like the last one that I created. It's a little bit easier with this particular lab with a drawing tablet, especially for the round shapes. And I'm going to insert another blank keyframe. And this will be the last one that I do. This might even be too much. Maybe I'll just start to do what if you remember with the lightning, I'm going to start to do that dissipation. F7. And here it's just going to start to sort of and then F7, insert blank keyframe. F7. And F7, and now I'm just sort of doing that dotted trick. And maybe one more where they're just really just sort of rippled out. Okay, so I'm going to play this back, but I want to make sure I have a blank keyframe at the end of it. And I'm just going to insert frames because I don't want it when I watch it play back in a loop at real time. That's pretty good. So I've got my splash that is creating this little ripple effect. Now, there's another thing I can do, and that is I can create a splash. So I've got the ripple happening, but we want to see something more. We need to see that little antic of sort of Newton's law, opposite and equal reaction. For every action, there's an opposite and equal reaction. So when this hits down, we want to see something kind of pop back up. So going back into this, here, I'm going to zoom in, and I'm just going to start to draw in and using my brush, and I'm going to bring this to like 8. And just sort of just drawing in a little splash. And now I'm going to onion skin these out. I'm getting a little too picky with these, so just gonna have to start to it doesn't need to be perfect. And I find that that is generally a thing that a lot of people do, even myself included. I was just doing it, where you keep redoing the same thing until it looks like right or whatever. And actually, you know, I could say you could probably do it like a million times, and until you have the rest of these frames in, it's never going to look right when you're only messing around with like 2 or 3 frames. And I'm going to continue forward with this. And maybe like one more. And now I'm going to play it back. Now you'll see what I did there is that I didn't delete, or not delete, insert a blank keyframe for the last frame. So now I'm going to play it back one more time. And I get this cool little splash happening. And the cool little ripple effect happening. So you can go ahead and create some really, really neat effects that happen. And one more thing I want to show you is okay. Let's go over here. And create a little sort of dock, if you will. Something like that. Oop. And let's just give it a little bit further. Oop. Alright. So I play this. I've got this. Oh. That was silly. I'm going to cut this and put it on its own layer. Cut. New layer. Paste in place. Alright. Dock. Now, with this dock layer, one more effect I want to create is a little rippling effect. So let's just say about here, once it splashes, that little ripple sort of affected this one or something. What I'm going to do is create a new layer. And dock ripple. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to start by a few frames afterwards. I'll say like here. I'm going to start by creating, let's bring this brush smaller, a little ripple that happens here. So I'm going to go here, press F7, and here. And then again, have this start to sort of F7. F7. And actually, those are all kind of too close. I want these to be spread further. And then something like that. Now I'm going to play it. That's a little too quick, so I'd want to slow that down a lot. So in order to do that, I would draw these frames more close together. And in this case, I'm really just going to go through each one and just move them a little bit. More and more closer to one another. And I'm just using my arrow keys, selecting each frame and just arrowing these. Something like that. And my last frame, F7. So you kind of get a little ripple. And hide this one for now. They don't even need to necessarily be like curved lines. You can always do them as sort of jaggedy, sort of, to give it a little bit more of a wavy sort of effect. So it doesn't need to be that curved, sort of perfectly straight line every time. So I'll just play that back. Oh, I got two of them happening all at the same time. And here, I'll just go ahead and sort of finish this one off real quick. And a lot of times you might even find this one like a little bit more sort of, I guess you could say, realistic, more believable maybe, because it doesn't have that sort of perfect quality of line work or whatever, because you want it to sort of have a little wave effect to it, because water tends to have that type of effect. So now I'm going to press F7 one last time, and I'm going to take these, bring these back, and I'm going to set this to a guide layer and call this Dock Ripple 2, just to show you both little ways you can kind of do it. Whoop. Here I need to make sure F7, and then here there we go. Do that one more time. Kind of get a little ripple effect off of that. So anyway, you kind of get the idea. You get some little water effects. And just for reference purposes, something like that. So that'll separate the water from the sky, in this case, I guess you could say. Anyway, those are some little nifty little tricks for water. You got the ripple with the splash, and then this little aftermath effect happening from here. And you could sort of, if I had this raindrop closer, just go ahead and do that. Alright, let me go ahead, turn this off. Zoom in. And I'm going to do an edit multiple frames. Oh, there we go. Maybe have it a little bit closer. And then this. Right there. Play it again. And I could stagger the time so it matches a little bit better. Okay, bring that back. Alright. And you get the idea. So I just played around with the frames, just getting, and you can mess around with the timing to get it however you like, but that's basically the purpose. So we have a bunch of like little keyframed animations that we've created. You could convert all of these into symbols and then just use them as drag and drop instances of one another. You could even in the raindrop itself, if you wanted to each raindrop to have one of these little splashes on like water or something, you could go ahead and do that, or even on concrete. On concrete though, you wouldn't have the ripple, you would just have the splash. So you get the idea, and that's some cool little tricks for water effects. Thanks for watching. And if you have any questions, inbox me.